Next, we're going to hear from Cleo. Cleo Lake is a former Lord Mayor of Bristol and an elected councillor and an MEP candidate for the Green Party. Cleo is an advocate for social justice and a presenter of the African AF podcast, which stands for African as Future, and a powerful voice for African heritage communities in Britain and beyond as well. And it's great to have you with us, Cleo. I'll hand over to you for a few minutes to respond to the topic.
Thank you very much, Germany, and I'm happy to be here tonight. And I really enjoyed listening to Bishop James there, who I felt gave us a good centre to start our discussions tonight. And I hope it will be a discussion where we can discuss our thoughts, our feelings, and perhaps come to some tangible solutions as well. If I can, I would start on a bit of a personal note by saying that I'm not entirely sure if I am a Christian. I do have faith. I have attended church in my life, and I do attend church here and there. Of course, I attended church many times when I was the Lord Mayor of Bristol, which I absolutely enjoyed. My mother, who I describe as white British, whatever that really means, she was born in Hove and grew up in Staffordshire, rural Staffordshire, and is definitely part Scots Canadian. But she, whilst I was growing up, she would describe herself as actually atheist until in recent years converting to Islam. However, throughout that journey, she's always been a humanitarian and always been someone who's been an advocate for nature and for animals besides ourselves, and really respecting animals and nature. So I've had that in me from a very young age. My father, I describe as a proud African man born in Jamaica, and he passed away when I was quite young. And whilst he also would perhaps shy away or move away deliberately from Christianity, most of his family and some of my upbringing was strongly Pentecostal. My father did buy me a gold cross as a child, despite his skepticism of Christianity. And I mention this because his wariness of it was stemming from his childhood in Jamaica and the attitude, perhaps, of some of the leaders of the church and of how the doctrines were forced upon people. It was only fairly recently that I came to understand, perhaps a few decades after his death, that he was more interested in traditional practices that have the root in Africa, but had travelled over to the Caribbean and had kept some of its essence, things that actually really connect people with nature and the cosmos, things that try not to separate from nature and the cosmos. So I just wanted to give you that bit of background. In terms of thinking about the Promised Land, well, I tried to Google it, of course, and it is sort of obviously a phrase I've heard of, and I have my own notion of it in my head. I actually asked my partner, who is a Catholic from Ghana, and he started telling me all about a story about Moses. And I said, that may be relevant somewhere, but I'm not sure if that is the focus of tonight's discussion. I was convinced it was more talking about how we can move forward and develop a new, positive, normal out of the circumstances we find ourselves in. I also reflected, I'm a reggae music fan. Perhaps I would be, being half Jamaican. Anyway, there is a reggae icon, now deceased, called Dennis Emmanuel Brown, and he has quite a famous song called The Promised Land. And I looked through the lyrics, and there's just a couple of lines that really stood out to me, which are, there's plenty of land for you and I, by and by, lots of food to share for everyone, no time for segregation in the Promised Land. And I think that does capture a lot of how I feel about how we do need to move forward. I understand that a focus tonight is also about the environment, but I feel that we cannot separate social justice from environmental justice, and whether that is at home or abroad. Those few lines make me think of things like food and land sovereignty. I'm slightly encouraged by our fellow UK citizens there in Scotland, who have in recent years managed to put through land reform bills, which actually go some way to sharing land and distributing wealth in a more equitable manner, i.e. telling some of the dukes and people in elite positions that it is no longer acceptable to sit in your mansion on acres and acres of land while other people struggle to have a roof over their head. Surely in 2020, those days must be gone. Equally, isn't it a disgrace that children, adults and elders will go hungry here in the UK when we are, on paper, one of the richest nations on the planet? I find it entirely shocking. I'm sure you do too. And of course, the essence of Christianity is about caring and sharing about each other and about the environment, because we cannot survive if we do not have an environment intact, if we do not protect Mother Nature. Reflecting on our situation through COVID, and as a local councillor, I've seen that some things did slow down. In many ways, we were slowly regressing back entirely to how things were. But there was a period where people were really appreciating the outdoors, appreciating open spaces, appreciating air that was a little cleaner, and that is important. And also, my council here in Bristol and other councils up and down the country were doing more to open up roads, for example, to accommodate more pedestrians and cyclists. That is still happening, but I'm not sure how long or how far it will go. A little bit back to my culture and heritage as an African heritage person, born in the UK, with also Caribbean heritage. Again, through reggae music and discussions and things I overhear from my elders, many of them from the Rastafarian community, who of course do share the same scriptures, there are ideas and phrases that are passed down to us. Things like missionaries turned up in our places of origin, or the places that we were. They gave us the Bible and took our land and took our lives. Through that period, there was ecocide and genocide. And the legacy of that is something that is still very much with us today, through rife global inequality, discrimination, and everything else. We all know about this, and we've seen an element of this rise up alongside COVID through Black Lives Matter, for example, as well as, perhaps more positive, the reparations movement. A reparations movement that believes that we desperately all need to heal from the painful past. We need to face up to it, heal from it, and that we cannot mitigate the natural disasters that are heading our way if we cannot repair from this. In fact, holistic African reparations are a gateway to planetary repairs. Just a few more notes. And I agree with what Bishop James said, that we have been actively encouraged in society to become individuals, self-centered, and in many ways to care and to share and to go above and beyond for others is running against the tide that is fed to us quite often. So the challenges are there. But the repercussions are going to be severe if we don't mitigate this and if we do not promote change. And whilst the global south, which is least responsible for the mess that the planet is in, it is likely to be hit hardest. But as we also heard from Bishop James, the UK is not exempt from natural disaster. And it shouldn't be a case of out of sight and out of mind. Life is a blessing. Nature is a blessing. The resilience of nature is outstanding. I walk down my street surrounded by concrete, and yet the buddleia, the dandelions, and all other manner and host of living plants still survive. And I take heart from that. So let's act collectively now and attempt to rein ourselves in. We're all guilty to some extent. We're all sat here as hypocrites to some extent. We have to put our hands up. And I also think that we have to humble ourselves. We have to seek counsel from places that perhaps we haven't before, or that we aren't usually inclined to. And I would suggest we should be reaching out actively to First Nation people, earth protectors who have been holding the fort for generations. When will we get out of our own way to hear and heed their calls? Thank you for listening.